Starting with the very latest from the farmer protests and the politics around it. 5 opposition leaders, including Rahul Gandhi and Sharad Pawar, like we said, have just reached the Rashtrapati Bhavan, and the meeting with President Ramnath Kovind has started. They're meeting the president, needless to say, over the farmer protests and the new farm laws. The opposition, led by Rahul Gandhi, will seek the president's intervention and seek the repealing of the new farm laws. Remember that all of these opposition leaders have at one point or another, when in power, proposed precisely the laws that have now been rolled out by the Modi government. So there is a degree of hypocrisy in what is playing out right now, but that is the very nature and the core of politics in this country. The BJP has opposed farm laws of this kind when they've been in opposition, so it goes both ways. So the opposition leaders, including Sharad Pawar, who has literally been agriculture minister and proposed laws and policies of this kind as agriculture minister many years ago under the UPA government, is now part of this delegation meeting Ramnath Kovind. So I just wanted to put out the context there as we report these developments to you. India Today's Kamaljeet Sandhu is with me live. Kamal, 5 opposition leaders, Rahul Gandhi, Sharad Pawar, whose letter we also saw just a few days ago, all of these leaders meeting Ramnath Kovind at this time, and that meeting has started, we're hearing, Kamal.
Yes, the meeting was supposed to start at 5. Half an hour ago, all these leaders came in. The last to come was Rahul Gandhi, the Congress leader. But clearly, it's government which is not really considering the opposition leader as a stakeholder in the farmer protest. But remember, the opposition parties have been putting up pressure. They've been saying that this is not a very well thought of agri laws, and that is why it must be repealed. Since the president is the custodian of the constitution, they want him to intervene in this particular matter and tell or advise the government that they need to repeal this. One of the other factors is or call Parliament session. One was due, but remember, the government, because of COVID, has not agreed for a winter session of Parliament. So yes, even as farmers stage protests, and remember, even as the documentation was sent to farmers, they have not really agreed upon it. But there is day 14 of the impasse.
Apologize for interrupting you. The press conference by the farmers' unions have just begun, where they're going to enunciate their response to the new proposals by the Modi government. Let's cut across and listen in. Kamal, I'll come back to you. Okay, that's the latest that we're getting. They've rejected it.
सरकार द्वारा कोई प्रपोजल भेजती है तो उसके बारे में विचार करेंगे। दूसरा फैसला ये हुआ है, जियो के जो जितने भी प्रोडक्ट हैं पूरे देश में नेशनल लेवल पर जो मॉल्स हैं सभी का बाइकाट करेंगे। पूरे देश में एक दिन का जिला हेडक्वार्टर पर मोर्चा लगेगा। 14 तारीख शुक्रवार को उनको घेरेंगे और वहां मोर्चा लगेगा। सोमवार पूरे देश में लगातार रोष प्रदर्शन जारी रहेंगे। पंजाब, हरियाणा, यूपी, एमपी, राजस्थान और अदर स्टेट, जहां पर पूरे रोष प्रदर्शन जारी रहेंगे।
सर फिर से रिपीट कर दीजिए, क्या होगा जिलेवार प्लीज।
पूरे देश में लगातार रोष प्रदर्शन जारी रहेंगे। पंजाब, हरियाणा, यूपी, एमपी, राजस्थान, इसमें 14 मध्य प्रदेश 14 तारीख को धरने लगाए जाएंगे। 14 तारीख को धरने लगाए जाएंगे। जो धरने नहीं लगाएंगे वो दिल्ली को कूच करेंगे। जयपुर दिल्ली हाईवे रोकने के लिए 12 तारीख तक फैसला कर लिया गया है। 12 तारीख तक उसको रोका जाएगा। जयपुर दिल्ली हाईवे 12 तारीख तक उसको रोका जाएगा। 12 तारीख से पहले रोक दिया, नहीं तो 12 तारीख तक तो रोक ही देंगे उसको। फाइनल है। अडानी अबानी के जो प्रोटेक्ट है, जहां मॉल्स हैं, अदर मॉल्स हैं, टोल प्लाजा हैं, बीजेपी के जितने भी नुमाइंदे मंत्री हैं, उनका घेराव होगा। उनका पूर्ण तौर से बाइकाट करेंगे पूरे देश में नेशनल लेवल पर। जी, बीजेपी के 12 तारीख को पूरे देश में एक दिन के लिए टोल प्लाजा फ्री कर दिए जाएंगे।
एक दिन ਲਈ के 12 तरीक को
एक दिन के लिए 12 तारीख को पूरे देश के टोल प्लाजा फ्री कर दिए जाएंगे। यही आज की मीटिंग का जो फैसला हुआ है और इसी पर हम बेनती करूंगा कक्का जी से, वो विस्तार से बताएंगे।
देखिए,
पॉइंट्स और डेट के साथ सर प्लीज।
बंधुओं को नमस्कार। आवाज ठीक से आ रही?
हाँ जी, हाँ जी।
कल जो अमित शाह जी के साथ 2 घंटे बैठकर मंथन हुआ था, उस मंथन में सबसे पहले तोमर जी ने जो हमारी 5 बैठकें हुई थी, उन 5 बैठकों का प्रस्तुतिकरण किया कि हमने 5 बैठकों में क्या क्या किया है। उसके बाद अमित शाह जी ने कहा कि हम फिर से चर्चा करते हैं कि इस अध्यादेश में कौन कौन सी विसंगतियां हैं जिनको दूर किया जाना आवश्यक है। हम तैयार हैं। हम लोगों ने कहा कि इस पर चर्चा 5 राउंड हो चुकी है, अब हम इस चर्चा करने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, ना हमारा मन है। उन्होंने कहा कि देखिए, हमारा रिक्वेस्ट है कि आप एक बार चर्चा करें। तो हम लोगों ने कहा कि अध्यादेश जारी होने के पहले अगर आप लोगों ने चर्चा की होती तो ये स्थिति निर्मित नहीं होती। तो उन्होंने कहा कि देखिए, गलती हुई है और गलती हुई है तो हम मिल बांट के आपस में इसका सुधार कर सकते हैं। हम लोगों ने फिर भी मना किया और साफ कह दिया कि हमारी डेडलाइन है एकदम 3 अध्यादेश पूरी तरह निरस्त हो और एमएसपी पर क्रय करने की गारंटी का कानून बनाया जाए। ये 2 बातें उनको साफ कह दी। फिर भी उन्होंने कहा कि हमारी रिक्वेस्ट है कि आपको हम प्रपोजल भेजेंगे इन्हीं आवश्यक सुधारों को लेकर। प्रपोजल हम भेजेंगे, आप उस पर कम से कम विचार करें या गौर करें। प्रपोजल जो आया वो गोल मोल जिस प्रकार का 3 अध्यादेश के बारे में सरकार जारी होने के बाद से लगातार कह रही है, उसी के आसपास है कि इससे बहुत फायदा होगा, ये किया जाएगा, वो किया जाएगा, सुदृढ़ीकरण किया जाएगा, किसान की आय दूनी की जाएगी, ये सब किया जाएगा, पर कैसे किया जाएगा इसका कोई स्पष्ट उल्लेख नहीं है। चूंकि हम लोग कह चुके हैं कि हमको ये अध्यादेश निरस्त कराना है और एमएसपी पर गारंटी का कानून, इसके हमारी ये डेडलाइन है। बाकी जो हमारी आगामी कार्य योजना है, हमारे आदरणीय आज के अध्यक्ष जी हैं, उन्होंने बता दिया है कि हमारी आगामी कार्य योजनाएं ये रहेंगी। आंदोलन और तेज किया जाएगा और एक के बाद एक हम दिल्ली की सड़कों को जाम करते जाएंगे और पूरे देश में आंदोलन किस प्रकार से गतिमान हो उसके लिए सारे प्रयास किए जाएंगे। मगर जब तक 3 अध्यादेश निरस्त नहीं होंगे, हमारी जंग जारी रहेगी।
मैं बताता हूँ आपको।
क्वेश्चन बाद में
नहीं, आप सबसे पहले
क्वेश्चन बाद में
12 तारीख को पूरे देश में रोज प्रदर्शन और धरने दिए जाएंगे। 12 तारीख को ना, सॉरी 14 तारीख को पूरे देश में धरने प्रदर्शन किए जाएंगे। धरने के साथ साथ ये दूसरी स्पेसिफिक जो दिल्ली के इर्द गिर्द के प्रांत हैं, उत्तराखंड, यूपी, पंजाब, हरियाणा, मध्य प्रदेश, राजस्थान, ये एक दिन के लिए दिल्ली चलो की काल देते हुए धरने लगाएंगे। दूसरे देश के जो हिस्से हैं, साउथ इंडिया, वहाँ वो लोग 14 तारीख के बाद भी इन धरने प्रदर्शनों को जारी रखेंगे अनिश्चित काल के लिए। 12 तारीख को पूरे देश में टोल प्लाजा जो है उनको फ्री कर दिया जाएगा, 12 तारीख को एक दिन के लिए। और 12 तारीख को ही दिल्ली जयपुर हाईवे, जयपुर दिल्ली हाईवे को 12 तारीख अल्टीमेटम है, उससे पहले भी हो सकता है। 12 से 12 तक तो वो जाम हो ही जाएगा। जियो के बारे में हमारे अध्यक्ष जी ने बता दिया। जियो यानी रिलायंस कंपनी के जो भी प्रोडक्ट एंड सर्विसेज हैं उनको बाइकाट किया जाएगा। जियो सिम के लिए कॉल दिया जाएगा उसका पोर्ट करवाने के लिए, और जियो के अदर प्रोडक्ट्स जो है उनके लिए। रिलायंस अमरजीत
जियो
बीजेपी के नेताओं
बीजेपी के नेताओं का भारत के स्तर पर सभी का हम घेराव करेंगे। उनके जो मुख्य ऑफिस है उनका घेराव करेंगे। तारीख जो 14 तारीख को हमने आपको 14 उसी दिन घेराव करेंगे। और उसके बाद जो हरियाणा बताया दर्शनपाल जी ने, जंगवीर जी ने, हरियाणा, पंजाब, यूपी, उत्तराखंड और राजस्थान के वहाँ पर धरना प्रदर्शन होगा और एक दिन का। और दूसरी जो दूर की स्टेट, साउदर्न स्टेट्स हैं, उनका भी 14 तारीख को पक्का निश्चित कालीन जो धरना प्रदर्शन होगा वो लगातार जारी रहेगा।
क्वेश्चन बाद में। हाँ जी, चलो भाई, क्वेश्चन बाद में होगा।
उसके बाद जो डीसी ऑफिस हैं, स्टेट्स के जिला हेडक्वार्टर्स हैं, उनका भी घेराव होगा। और ऐसे धरना प्रदर्शन है उसको आगे बढ़ाते जाएंगे। और हमारी जो कॉल है, सबसे जो बड़ी बात तो है भी हमारी दिल्ली को घेरने की बात है, जयपुर, आगरा। और जो जयपुर और दिल्ली-जयपुर और आगरा-दिल्ली जो एक्सप्रेसवे है, उनको घेराव की तारीख हमने फिक्स कर दी है। और हर हालत में दोनों जो रोड्स हैं वो 12 तारीख को हम बंद कर देंगे हर हालत में। और सभी संगठन रल के इसको करेंगे।
जी बाद में करना डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल जो धरना है वो डीसी ऑफिस के सामने होगा।
बोलो।
आज जो फैसले हुए हैं, बात तो कर दिया, ज़्यादातर रख दिया है साथियों ने। 14 तारीख को जो है पूरे देश के अंदर 14 तारीख को पूरे देश के अंदर बड़ा आंदोलन होगा। हर जगह प्रदर्शन किए जाएंगे। 14 तारीख को, 12 तारीख को जयपुर हाईवे रोड है उसको रोका जाएगा और इसको जो टोल प्लाजे हैं इनको पर्चे मुक्त किया जाएगा। ये फैसला पूरे देश के अंदर लिया गया है और सब जगह पे इस आंदोलन को और ज्यादा तेज करने के लिए पूरे देश के अंदर कॉल दी जा रही है कि सभी देश से लोग जो है वो दिल्ली की तरफ कूच करेंगे। ये कॉल दी जा रही है कि ज्यादा से ज्यादा लोग जो है वो दिल्ली की तरफ आएंगे। और इसके लेकर जिलों के अंदर जो प्रोटेस्ट हैं वो 14 तारीख से शुरू हो जाएंगे, जहां पर जो बीजेपी के लोग हैं, जो एमपी है, एमएलए है, इनके जो मंत्री है, उन सब का पूर्ण रूप से इनका बाइकाट किया जाएगा। इनके खिलाफ प्रदर्शन किए जाएंगे और ये प्रदर्शन जो है इनके खिलाफ, नेताओं के खिलाफ लगातार जारी रहेंगे। ये आंदोलन जब तक ये 3 काले कानून निरस्त नहीं हो जाते हैं तब तक ये आंदोलन लगातार जारी रहेगा। प्रहलाद सिंह भारूखेड़ा, प्रदेश अध्यक्ष, हरियाणा किसान मंच।
एक मिनट टिकैत जी
इसको इधर रखिए।
रुक तो जाओ मेरे भाई,
करते हैं खड़ा होकर ही कर लूं। आ जाएंगे सारे।
देखो, जो यहाँ पे फैसले हुए हैं ये पूर्ण रूप से जो यहाँ मोर्चे ने जो फैसला लिया है और पूरा देश का फैसला है, ये किसी व्यक्ति का फैसला नहीं, किसी संगठन का नहीं है। और पूरे ये मोर्चाबंदी जिस तरह से दिल्ली की करी जाएगी, ये पूरे यहाँ का किसानों का फैसला है। और आम किसान जो गाँव में है वहाँ तक अपनी आवाज हम पहुँचावे। जो फैसले यहाँ पे लिए हैं सब देश के किसानों की रजाबंदी इन फैसलों के साथ में है। जो तारीख यहाँ पे दी गई है उन तारीख पे सब लोग अपना काम करेंगे। जो ड्राफ्ट भारत सरकार ने दिया था वो ड्राफ्ट हमको मान्य नहीं है। 3 बिल हैं, मेन रूप से उनके बिल वापसी नहीं होते, ये आंदोलन जब तक जारी रहेगा। और चीजों पे जो होगी इसके बाद में बातचीत सरकार से होगी, नहीं होगी, उनका नया ड्राफ्ट आएगा, उसके बाद में बात उनसे कब होगी वो आने वाले टाइम पे ही पता चलेगा। हम सब लोग साथ में हैं।
डॉक्टर अशोक धावले महाराष्ट्र से हैं, AIKS के जनरल सेक्रेटरी।
आप इधर आओ, खड़े होके कर दो, यही खड़े होके कर दो।
साथियों, कल का जो भारत बंद हुआ संयुक्त किसान मोर्चा के ऐलान पर, ये बहुत ही ऐतिहासिक भारत बंद हुआ। पिछले कई सालों में इतना जबरदस्त भारत बंद हमारे देश में कभी हुआ नहीं जो कल हुआ। और उसके अंदर पूरे देश के किसानों के साथ भारत की पूरी जनता अलग अलग राज्यों से बहुत ही जबरदस्त तरीके से किसानों के बाजू में खड़ी हो गई। करोड़ों लोग इसके अंदर उन्होंने हिस्सा लिया।
I want to go across now. So you've got the gist of what the farmers have said. They've basically rejected all these counter proposals by the Modi government, and they've basically announced with a list there, an aggressive list of how this entire protest is going to be escalated. Rahul Shrivastava and Poulomi Saha joining me. They're at the front line of reporting this developing story. Rahul, in many ways, this was expected. No one really expected any kind of a big breakthrough, given that the farmers have been saying from the start that they will not accept anything less than a full rollback of these three laws. But what you've heard the farmers now say is not only are they throwing the proposal back, but they've also listed a kind of battle plan, which begins with the blocking of highways, a nationwide protest on the 14th, the taking over of toll plazas to ensure more people can come to Delhi, boycotting and protests outside BJP leaders' houses. This is like a declaration of war.
Shiv, on the face of it, it does not augur well, because it does mean hardships for the common man, and I think even for the protesting farmers. But Shiv, if you look at the government strategy from the first in the series, this recent series of meetings, the government initially asked them that what are your objections? It gave clarifications. Then it started discussing the points which are points of convergence. Then the government came down, then came a point where the opposition, these unions said, nothing doing, we only want the repealing of the bill. The government or we will get back to you. Then came the Amit Shah meeting to break that rhythm of confrontation which was getting set up. The government came up with written assurances on the amendment it wants. What if you see the government did in this period and through these measures, also the Bandh, is that there is a clear sense of one, unreasonableness as far as certain unions are there and the overall situation is there. The second is that this protest is largely restricted to certain segments, that is around Punjab and Haryana and others. Now what the government's attempt is to play for time. It has already done it in terms of creating a sense of isolation, one, the region, and also the unions which are strident. It has provided something tangible to those who want to pursue a middle path and reasonable middle path as far as the unions are concerned. In this, if the unions go further with their escalated protest, as you are saying, it will also, what they'll do is, it will cause hardships to the common man. And that's where they will lose that sense of sympathy which they can have. And that's what the government eventually will ply on. One, create a regional divide. Second is within the system, create a sense of discordant note between the unions which are strident and the middle path, and also the connect between the farmers' protest and the public. If they escalate, they can escalate, create a problem for the government, but there is also a chance of losing that sense of sympathy among the common man as far as the protests are concerned. That's what eventually it is going to, it seems, boil down to.
Appears to be so. Poulomi, I know these are just early moments yet, but by no means was the government going to have been expecting some kind of a big breakthrough with the farmers welcoming that counter proposal. So what's the next step now? Because basically the ball is now back in the government's court. The farmers have spoken. They've said we're planning to scale this big, hopefully nationwide. That's the plan at any rate. What is the government's next step? Any clues that are coming in already?
Well, like you said, Shiv, it's a little early to figure whether, how the government is going to approach this announcement, which has been made by the farmer groups at the Singhu border, because not only have they rejected the government's proposal, something, which the government was probably anticipating as well, given that the farmers also dug their heels in that meeting with Amit Shah last evening when they sought a complete repealing of the 3 farm laws, and the government said absolutely no no, that's no go. We can propose some amendments and that's the best we can do for you at the moment. Maybe throw in a few more changes if you accept the current proposal in order to sweeten the deal. But that did not happen. Now what has happened is not only have they rejected the proposals, what they've said is we're going to lay siege in the the national capital and the national capital region area. So that is going to be extremely critical now, how the government approaches this. One, they have to, of course, stop this from happening in a way that it, it causes discomfort to, the residents of these areas, and of course the protests that they're going to have, that they say they're going to have across all districts in the nation as well. And then, of course, resolve this crisis as well. We have to see whether the government will still try to work on some of the division that is there among some of, in this grouping itself. They have come out and spoken in one voice, all 40 of them. But yes, we've also heard of some discordant notes where some do believe, let's meet the government halfway. Will the government start working on those individuals and those groupings? That remains to be seen.
Poulomi, stay with me. I just want to list out once again very broadly what the farmers have now said. Of course, point number one, they've outright rejected what the government has said. Now let me tell you what the announcements are that the farmers have made now, because this is specific and this is something that viewers not just in the north but across the country will be interested in, because apart from the farmers issue itself, this is also something that may have to do with your daily life. So December 12th is when the farmers have announced a blocking of the Delhi-Jaipur highway. They say that they're going to take over toll plazas and make them ticketless so people can pass through freely. I think the idea is to get more and more people to come to Delhi. December 14th, this particular farmer leader has announced a nationwide protest with a large number of protests that they're hoping to see happen in different parts of the country. BJP leaders, representatives, I'm guessing MLAs, MPs, local body leaders are going to be identified and boycotted, and protests will take place outside their house. Okay, now the opposition leaders who've been trying to fire off the backs of these farmers and create politics around it, despite the inherent hypocrisies, are speaking now. Let's listen in.
Listen. These 5-member delegations that you're seeing met. You're seeing these 5 members here who met the President of India, gave a memorandum. The copies are here. A few copies are here which you will have to share. They'll be given to you. Basically, we are asking for the repeal of these agri laws and the electricity amendment bill. And we said our point to the President was these were passed in a very anti-democratic manner, without any proper discussion. A proper consultation and discussion would have prevented this sort of a situation from happening. A very heroic, historic strike, courageous by the farmers, and which is growing by the day. Keeping that in mind, the government should immediately repeal these bills and the Electricity Amendment Act, and then discuss and see what sort of a thing needs to be done. But right now, that is what is required. That is the essence of our demand.
What is the President say, sir? What is the President say?
We'll look into it. As always. He listened to us. As always, he said we'll look into it and pass it on.
So basically, regarding all these 3 bills, I think in the Parliament there was a request from all opposition parties that these bills should be discussed in depth, or we should send to select committee, because that will get opportunity to discuss in detail. But unfortunately, not a single suggestion from opposition was accepted, and in hurry, all these 3 bills were passed. That is one of the reasons why we started getting reaction from farming community. I must say that political parties are not directly involved in this agitation initiative, but farming community has realized that all these bills ultimately not protecting their main interests. there was a worry regarding minimum support price. That minimum support price issue was not mentioned anywhere in the bill. So that is also very disturbing thing for the farming community. And that is the reason what we have seen last practically 12-13 days. In this cold, they are on the street very peacefully, they are expressing their unhappiness, and I think it was the duty of the government to take interest and try to resolve this issue. But barring some discussion, nothing has happened, and that is the reason ultimately we decided to approach highest authority President of India and with a request that they should convey the feeling of the farming community to the government.
Good evening. We met the President and we informed him of our view regarding these bills. And we said that it is very important that these bills are taken back. A couple of points we mentioned to the President. The first was the manner in which these bills were passed. Without any discussion, without a conversation with the opposition parties, and certainly without a discussion with the Kisans of this country who have built this country. So the way the bills were imposed, we see it as an insult to the Kisans of this country. The Kisan has lost faith in the government. The Kisan does not believe that the government is acting in their interest, and that is why lakhs of them are on the streets. And non-violently, compassionately on the streets, they are struggling in cold weather with complete respect. So we informed the President that it is absolutely critical that these bills are taken back. हिंदी में बता देता हूँ. देखिए, जो किसान है उसने इस देश की नींव रखी है और वो दिन भर इस देश के लिए काम करता है. ये जो बिल पास किए गए हैं ये किसान विरोधी बिल है. प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा था कि ये बिल किसानों के हित के लिए है. सवाल उठता है कि अगर ये बिल किसानों के हित में है तो किसान सड़कों पे क्यों खड़ा है? किसान इतना गुस्सा क्यों है? क्योंकि इन बिलों का लक्ष्य प्रधानमंत्री जी के मित्रों को हिंदुस्तान का जो एग्रीकल्चरल सिस्टम है वो पकड़ाने का है और किसान इस बात को बहुत अच्छी तरह समझ गया है. किसान की शक्ति के सामने कोई नहीं खड़ा हो सकता है और सरकार को गलतफहमी में नहीं होना चाहिए. सरकार को ये नहीं सोचना चाहिए कि किसान हट जाएंगे, डर जाएंगे. किसान, हिंदुस्तान का किसान डरेगा नहीं, हटेगा नहीं जब तक ये बिल रद्द नहीं कर दिए जाए. धन्यवाद.
सर 1 minute, sir. Friends, we met the President. We asked him, being the custodian of the Constitution, being the highest authority in our country, to intervene and advise the government to repeal all these 3 agricultural laws. We told him these agricultural laws, 3 laws, will place the farmers and agricultural workers at the mercy of corporate and big agri-business giants. This should not happen. It will not be in the interest of the country as a whole. And it is not affecting only farmers who are agitating for the past 2 weeks. It will subject the agricultural workers to horrific conditions, living conditions. And this should not happen in this country. As political parties, we told the President, we have come here, we cannot remain mute spectators when farmers are on the streets fighting for justice. And as political parties, we cannot remain just onlookers. That's why we went there to articulate the concerns that farmers are having and the challenges that country is facing today because of this anti-democratic, anti-farmer laws which need to be repealed. This is what we told the President.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. Sir, 2 years back, this government promised in the parliament during a budget session that they will implement MS Swaminathan Commission recommendations in toto. But this bill has removed that promise. This bill has negatived that promise. This is the first mistake. Half of the farmers, more than 50% of the farmers are small farmers. They sell their products as a distress sale. Farmers should not be left like that. More, if this bill continues, we can see more suicides among farmers. This government is leading farmers for suicide. It is not a joke. It is the life of the farmers where the government should protect them. After promising in the parliament that the government will follow MS Swaminathan Commission committee reports in toto, now this bill has effectively withdrawn that promise. So it is going to leave our...
I want to go back to our National Affairs editor, Rahul. We've just heard this lineup of opposition leaders now speaking after a meeting with the president. How are you reading the many contradictions that have already appeared in this? It's good that the opposition is trying to show some kind of unity in this. The government has already sort of revealed many of the hypocrisies that exist, including Sharad Pawar as agriculture minister, etc. You've spoken to Sitaram Yechury as well, about the many other contradictions regarding Mamta Banerjee, the Congress, etc. How are you reading this motley union of opposition leaders now trying to make a big deal out of this?
Shiv, I think the opposition, this sense of unity that they try to create here, you see, it's very makeshift in character.
Yeah.
Why I say it makeshift? Because I recall right since 2008, when the left actually abandoned the UPA and brought the Manmohan Singh government virtually to the end of collapse, and there was that famous vote for vote scam. From there on, be it banking, be it agriculture, left was the bittermost critic of both Sharad Pawar as agriculture minister and his policies. And at that time, there was a move on the APMC Act, which was opposed by the left. If you come down till as recent as 2019, when the Congress party created a manifesto in the Dam section, in that point number 11 on the agriculture very clearly said repealing of the APMC Act. So this motley collection of leaders is there for the political dividend of it. Now, the crisis is, yes, the left has remained very consistent, and even the left-affiliated unions are the bitter critique of the bills, and they want the bills to be withdrawn. The element is that by moving in politically in this movement, which is largely a farmer protest, they gave earlier an opportunity by becoming part of the Bandh, and now they will offer more opportunity to the government to brand the movement as politically backed. That's not very good. The second element is the government, by floating these amendments publicly, by giving them in writing, has addressed a lot of those templates which are floating around in the system, that this is what the farmers wanted. What did the farmers say when they started protesting? Hamari zameen chali jayegi. Now that's part of the contract farming in which the government has ready to create an amendment that there will be no threat to the land of the farmer. APMC Act will be under strain. The government has said that the open mandi system and the APMC will be at parity, taxed equally. If there was a fear about dispute resolution that the farmer may have no resolution, the government said there will be farmer courts. What the government actually has done by publicly floating it, it has created a tangible, visible proof that it is addressing the main templates that were created to start the protest. Now, I will add my two-bit here. The government right now does have a possibility to issue ordinance including all these amendments, which will become tangible elements and evidence that the government has created a certain willingness or has created a certain outcome as far as the farm protests are concerned. That's one outcome, but it is largely up to the government how it moves from here on.
Rahul, stay with me. We've got some, we've got this breaking information coming in that the Agriculture Minister has just reached Home Minister Amit Shah's residence, obviously to take stock after this declaration of war by the farmers and them calling for protest. Poulomi, what are you hearing from the government? Narendra Singh Tomar to meet Amit Shah right now.
That's right. He has, in fact, reached Mr. Amit Shah's residence. That happened in no time, Shiv. It's almost as soon as that press conference got over, Mr. Tomar left from his residence and has now arrived at the Union Home Minister's residence. Both of them were there at that meeting at the International Center for Agriculture Research in Pusa in Delhi yesterday, where they met farmer representatives, 13 of them, over 3 hours, and tried to convince them about the government's intentions with these 3 farm laws, and, of course, saying that they're willing to make certain concessions given the sort of misgivings and doubts that the farmers had. But clearly that's not cut any sort of ice with the farmer groups. They have decided to, in fact, reject those proposals and lay siege on Delhi and the National Capital Region primarily, and across the country as well. So this is going to be extremely critical. It remains to be seen what the next step of the government will be, because they were waiting to hear back from the farmers after the proposals were put down in writing for them. But clearly at the moment, now they have to figure what is going to be their next course of action, given that they were willing to make only these many concessions at the moment, maybe bend a little bit more here and there. But clearly the farmers have outrightly rejected every proposal sent to them, even the proposal that guaranteed MSP will be given in writing as well. It is there in the proposals that the government in fact sent across to the farmer unions earlier this afternoon.
Okay, so doesn't augur well for the government because their proposals basically been flung back in their face and it has been sort of topped up by the farmer unions with a declaration of war. The protest is going to become an all-out national protest. If things go to plan, the government is going to try and make sure that the inherent contradictions within the protests, especially with its linkages to these opposition parties led by people like Rahul Gandhi and Sharad Pawar, is what the battle plan is going to be. We'll see how it goes. We'll get you the latest breaking stories coming up next here on 5 Live.